Hey everybody, this is Pat Mesiti and welcome to a very special broadcast today on all our social media platforms and YouTube called Let the Mothers Speak. Now you might be saying, why let the mothers speak? Well, let me share with you a few thoughts before I bring you on our guests. Today we're going to be speaking about issues that really are hurting women. Now, I'm talking about the old-fashioned women. The one that had menstrual cycles, the ones that could have babies, the ones that didn't have penises. I'm sure you remember those. It seems like they are something of a relic of the past and our politicians aren't helping. Now, I don't mean to offend anyone, and none of this is hate speech, because today we're going to look at the de-womenizing of women on many levels. The political level, the financial level, as it relates to the voice, as it relates to job security, as it relates to the political system that is trying to eradicate women. There's a brutal assault on women, and it's not just the politicians that cannot define what a woman is. All they've got to do is be married to one or live with one, and you'll define it pretty quick. It's that they're choosing that women to ignore the fact that women actually exist. I believe women should be looked after, and I believe women deserve equality in all areas. It seems to me that they're still struggling for equality of pay. And it seems to me that women are becoming the endangered species. Why? Well, firstly, their voices are not heard. When events like Let the Women Speak are organized, and I will have someone who is actually there, and when these events are organized and then women, real women, can't speak because they're drowned out by a bunch of men in skirts or by a bunch of radical lefty activists. And when the activists become the heroes and the women become the villains, such as in the case of Victoria under that pathetic leader called John Pasuto, we have a problem in our society. You see, anywhere else, if that happened in a public square or a home, that would be classified as violence. However, when it's under the guise of so-called protesting and rights, women are discarded. There is a distortion. Our moral compass has become a spinning clock. The media and the politicians of our day want to punish women who speak up, terrorize them, vilify them, and call them names, such as Nazis. But we'll leave that alone because we'll get into that a little bit later on. And if you don't follow the narrative, as a woman, you are an enemy. Matter of fact, if you're a male who supports the freedom that women should have, there's something wrong with you. When in actual fact, it is the far left, the crazies, the out-of-control media and politicians that are the enemy. You see, the vilification, the name-calling, the threats is the same thing they did over 2 years ago under the pandemic. As I've often said, demons don't change. And if you don't follow the narrative, you're the enemy. You see, today, the fact that living, breathing, actual women are losing their rights is causing so many problems on so many levels. Parenting problems. Youth crime epidemic in Queensland, 18 deaths in 2 years. And with a female premier, all she has to say is, I'm limited as to what I can do. They are very complex issues. Now, there is a woman who really doesn't act like a woman of integrity, in my opinion. You see, a lot of the problems that are associated with our teenagers, and I know a little bit about this, having been the director of Youth Alive and Teen Challenge, reaching hundreds of thousands of kids, are a direct result, and I'll use this term, the emasculating of women and the pathetic weakness of men. It seems like we want a society that is neutral, neither male nor female. Let me remind you, God created male and female. He didn't create anything in between. And yet there is a struggle in society. Can I remind everybody today that without mothers, you would not be here. All of us are here because of one single word, mother. Now, Mother's Day is coming along, and of course, we've got the crazy lefties that want to call it Birthing Parents' Day, but we're not going to let that happen. You see, men don't make good mothers. And I'm going to say mothers should not have to be forced to be men. And it is that digression from those roles that is causing so much complication. You see, as in the political spectrum, People are asking for a voice. But what voice? Maybe what we need is some ears. Maybe what we need is not a select group of voices. And you're going to hear from some Indigenous leaders, female, I might add. You see, I've spoken to Indigenous leaders, female. I've tried today and over the last week to get a lot of so-called political leaders on the Indigenous side. And of course, they're all too busy. But I guarantee you, if I would have invited Lydia Thorpe, she'd have jumped at the chance. This is why I'm very concerned about this new referendum. You see, I've been to Alice Springs and I speak regularly to Indigenous leaders, particularly women. They don't even know what this voice is. But today, we're going to hear with some clarity what it means to them or it doesn't mean to them. It seems to me we have a culture of exclusion. We have a culture of exclusion, a culture that is cancelling the real voices. The fact that you and I are on this program today shows that we actually respect and honour women. You see, one of the main things that is going to be hurting women over 55 is the economic policies of the Labor government. What is going to hurt families over 55, particularly children, is the economic policies of the Labor Party. And later on, you're going to hear from a woman who's a foster carer who's going to help both men and women, but particularly women, try and get some financial help in these difficult times. You see, the Labor Party and the Greens have squandered our resources, raised our interest rates 9 times, and have followed a cult, the climate cult. This has resulted in a society that thrives on victim thinking. And if you want to get anything in life, say you're offended. However, that only applies to a select few. If you are a conservative woman, that doesn't apply to you. See, you're the enemy. But if you're a guy in a dress, that applies to you. And our moral compass has gone so far to the left, I don't know if we can ever get back. I believe a lot of this did not just start now. I believe a lot of this was introduced by that weak, woke, pathetic Prime Minister, and I have no apologies about that statement, called Scott Morrison. Now, let me just say this, and we have some guests. I am not pro-Labor or pro-Liberal. I'm pro-truth. There are some people, there are quite a few, and you'll hear from one of them, my favourite people today, who in the Liberal Party are out there doing the best they can to try and resurrect this corpse that is in moral confusion, that it's abandoned its core base. The reason why we need women to speak is because they have a nurturing spirit. It's because they are nurturers and carers. And today you're going to hear from diverse women of diverse backgrounds, not just one voice or a select voice. I've invited people who are different voices to what my voice and my conservative values, but they don't want to come on because they're scared to be asked the hard questions. I believe we need a society that frees our women to speak. You see, the trans movement is robbing women of their freedom, their rights, and their identities, while they have become the most protected species. And I'm not against trans people. If you want to be trans, knock yourself out. But don't force me. What I am amazed is of all these trans men who want to dress up and dance in front of children, I have yet to see a female dress up as a man and do the same thing to children. So it makes me wonder why you need the attention of a child. And when children are raised in a sexualized environment, when a society makes sex God, children will always be sacrificed. And sadly, that's what's happening. And that's why we need to let the mothers speak. Today, you're going to hear from a whole cross-section and one of my favorite people on the planet, a woman who stood up for freedoms and for what was right and is still doing that right now, person that I really believe should be the Premier of New South Wales, Tanya Davies. How are you, Tanya?
Hey, Pat, I'm doing really well. Good to see you again. Hello to everyone else.
Great to see you again. Thank you for all you're doing for so many people, not just for people in Mulgoa, but right across the nation. Tanya, what's happening down there and what's happening with women in our culture? What are you concerned about? What What moves you? What do you see happening right now in our culture?
Well, I think if I think back over many decades, we all acknowledge that change happens. Progress, invention, development, it just is a natural progression of our inquiry, of our industry, of our imagination. But what we're seeing in terms of the pace of change is an acceleration. And we're seeing that across the board. But what concerns me in relation to women is that the accelerated change that's happening in women's spaces and in women's lifestyle and in women's sports is accelerating at such a rate that it's almost hard for the average person to even be aware of the significant changes that are taking place. I'll just throw out a couple of examples. Just a few years ago, New Zealand weightlifter Laurel Hubbard, transgender woman, man, accepted to lift weights in the Olympics, Summer Olympics of 2020, a male allowed to compete in the female weightlifting category. We're looking over in the USA just a few months ago. We've got Leah Thomas, a male swimmer in the college athletic swimming competition across America, had been competing for his university as a male swimmer, all of a sudden decided he was a transgendered woman and was accepted to compete in the women's races, and basically took the places of women who had struggled and strived and dedicated thousands of hours to be the best they could be. In one decision of a male to step into a female space, basically removed an amazing young woman called Riley Gaines from actually winning that competition.
Wow.
That's just one thing. But when you take a step back and you go, well, then what happens to all of these sports people once they compete, these sports transgender women once they compete, men behaving and pretending that they're females, well, they then go into the locker rooms of biological females and undress and expose themselves. I mean, that is, women are being confronted, are being exposed to things that we do not give our consent to, all under this guise of inclusion and equality. I mean, you've got situations in America now where you've got men who are in prison, many for serious crimes, including rape and child molestation, determining that they are now a woman and requesting to be transferred to women's prisons. And many of them are pretending that they're women so they can get access to real biological women and continue their atrocity on those poor women. This is what's happening now. And that's why we need to, as a society, as leaders, we need to speak up and make sure that what we're seeing happening in other countries, to the extent that is happening, does not happen here in our nation, and confront and intimidate and potentially assault women and girls here in our nation.
You know, Tanya, I saw a very disturbing video a few weeks ago of a young boy, maybe 12, 13, and it looked like he was in a strip club, dressed in bondage outfits and gear and dancing in front of a group of men, and they're applauding this. What has happened to men? How sick are grown men? And as a mother and as a political leader, what can we do to stop this nonsense in this country? Because it seems like it's on both sides of the political fence.
Well, we need to speak out against it. We need to have voices, mothers, fathers, grandparents, uncles, aunts, everyone speak out against it. And I put the call out there to anyone. If you have actually experienced or you've encountered what we've just been talking about personally, I want you to reach out to me. You can find me, just Google my name and all my contact details come out, because I want to hear from you. I want to know exactly what's happening in our nation so I can speak out in relation to what's happening here. And I think what's really important in relation to men pretending that they're women in sport, there's all this talk about hormones and making sure that the testosterone is at a certain level so that they are then equal with their female competitors. But what that policy fails to actually take into consideration is that all of the years that they were growing up as a boy, that they naturally, biologically, have greater advantage in relation to their lung capacity, their muscle density, their bone density, which naturally puts them at an advantage over women in sports. And that's something that's also really important to get out there. It's just not the hormone level that the policy needs to be set at. We just need to separate boys from girls. Can I just also add Steve Biddulph? Now, Steve Biddulph is an amazing author and speaker, and he wrote fantastic books called Raising Boys and a recent one called Raising Girls. And in relation to raising girls, and it touches a little bit on the dangers of that girls face in our world, and that is that he basically summarizes all his research in terms of protecting girls right now, and that is that every person around that young girl need to work together to push back against the sexualization that is happening to girls younger and younger and younger. So when you've got teenage girls, prepubescent girls in locker rooms in the States being exposed to full-on male genitalia under the guise of inclusion and transgenderism, that is clearly an insult and a detriment to those girls, and it is traumatizing girls as we sit here and speak today. In terms of that young little boy, it is just appalling. It should not be happening. That should be a criminal offense. That poor little boy being exposed to such a sexual adult environment, it's just sickening and depraved. And our society needs to see it as being that and speak out against that.
Last question, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. What's it like being a female in politics? And can you encourage any young females in this area? Because we need voices like yours. But what's it like for you, Tanya? It's easy for us to be armchair critics and, this is what Tanya should have done and this is what, but you're there. You're there in the trenches, and I honor you for that. I honor you for that. I honor you for what you did during the pandemic. And I'm sorry if I get a bit emotional. I'm very proud of you. Extremely proud of you. But what's it like? Because I'm hearing reports that I don't like. And my next guest will talk about that. But what's it like for you? From your heart.
I've spoken about this before, and I'll share it again. Growing up, particularly in high school, I was bullied quite like extensively for 4 solid years. And during that time, I went to my Bible as a Christian. I went to my Bible and I sought refuge and strength from the Word of God. And during that time, what that taught me as a person, which I have with me today, is that I know who I am. I know whose I am. And I know that God has opened the door for me to be here. And while I am in this place, I will speak respectfully and I will debate respectfully, but I also stand on what I believe and stand on my values and prosecute what I believe. And I want to do that in a way that is feminine, that is womanly. Because one thing I hate about so much of the women in politics is that they almost try to behave as men to get their point across, or feel that they are a leader, or that they can be, a strong woman in politics. Well, I've just won my 4th election here in Western Sydney. I got an increased, thank you. I got an increased vote towards me when every single Liberal held seat around me fell to Labor. Now that just shows me that what I'm doing, and more importantly, how I'm doing it, is resonating, and people are listening, and people are looking up and following that in some respects in their own life. Whatever people say about me, you know what? Knock yourself out. To be honest, I've had death threats. I've had threats against my children. You name it. I've had the police investigate it. All sorts of things. I've been through it all. So what? Our future is way more important than me getting upset and offended over what someone says. And so I just take each day. I think a lot about things. I try and strategize. I'm a very self-contained, I'm at peace and calm on my own. I don't need to have lots of people around me all the time to make me feel that I'm someone special or that I'm a leader or whatever. So if I walk through the parliament and I'm walking on my own and I walk past groups of people chatting or hanging out, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. So,
you know, Tanya, I just had a little flashback, and I don't mean this in any like putting down way or condescending way, but I would never have thought that little girl in that youth group would have become the powerhouse that you are right now. And I want to thank you, and love to the family, love to the hubby and all the kids. Tanya Davies, you're a national treasure. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks for your time. See you, everyone.
You know, it's important that we have strong women. I have 3 daughters, and I've said to my daughters at all times, you don't need to bloke it out with a guy. Don't try and out-bloke him. Just be who you are, strong and feminine. This morning I came across a tweet by an amazing lady by the name of Stephanie Bastion. She's a research fellow at Women's Forum, an independent think tank that undertakes research, education, and public policy development on social, economic, health, and cultural issues affecting women. And what I loved about her was how she is standing up for women in that dictator state under Dan Andrews, but more now under a guy who I'm growing to dislike called John Pizzuto. Stephanie, thanks for being part of today's Let the Mothers Speak. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me. And I just want to also repeat your comments. I think Tanya Davis would be a great leader.
She would be a great leader. Hey, maybe you guys ought to team up. We could save both states. Stephanie, what in the world is going on in the Victorian Liberal Party? Have they completely lost their minds?
There's a lot of chaos and dysfunction here at the moment, and it's very sad to see it all playing out in the media. Essentially, what happened is we had a women's rights rally in Melbourne with Kelly J. Keane, who's a prominent women's rights activist. It wasn't an anti-trans rally. It was a rally just to talk about the impacts that gender ideology and self-ID laws are having on women and girls in society. So the fact that women are losing their scholarships, their swim spaces, the fact in Melbourne, male rapists have the right to be housed with females in prison. We're talking about some of the most marginalised women in our state, and they have no say and no control, and a petition they put out has been ignored. Now, MP Moira Deeming attended and spoke at the rally. She spoke on behalf of her community, and she spoke on behalf of Islamic members of her community who were too scared to turn up. And because people from the far left and the far right, but mainly the far left, turned up and gate crashed that event, it was used as an excuse to rack her over the coals and say, we oppose you and you don't belong in our party room, so we're going to expel you. So the Liberal Party parliamentary team, John Pizzuto with Georgie Crozier, Matt Back, David Southwick, moved a motion to expel her. Fast forward. Sorry?
Go ahead, Stephanie. Yeah, go ahead.
Fast forward to the meeting, Moira presented her case against their dossier, and she told a very personal story about how she got involved in women's rights activism, and the support in the room dropped away. And so they reached a compromise deal to suspend her so long as Leader John Pizzuto cleared her name and released a statement doing so, and that she'd be let back in within 9 months.
Why will John Pizzuto not publicly say and apologise for his Nazi statement to a woman that he knows has got no association with any of that?
Well, I think part of the problem for John is that he is trying to be a leader, but he is showing no leadership. It is very clear that he made a mistake from the get-go. A, in relation to Moira, B, in relation to the women that were co-organising the events. He misrepresented them time and time again. And it has got to the point now where they've reached an agreement in the party room. He has not upheld that agreement. And instead of coming forward and apologising and ending this ridiculous drama that's playing out in the media, he is digging in and digging a hole. And it is just, it's a lack of leadership, and it is poor judgment. And while the left and the state might be enjoying another turmoil, another public fight in the Liberal Party, at the end of the day, the people are looking at him and saying, you cannot lead, because you cannot acknowledge your wrongs, and he is just showing the public that he cannot be trusted.
I just got a tip for John Pursuto. I want to give you 2 words, John. I don't know whether you watch this. I know some of your cronies and hatchet men do, or hatchet women, actually. They're on both sides. Try this. I'm sorry. Let me give you 3 words. I was wrong. You know what? You might just win some respect from people and support. However, from what I'm seeing, and I don't know, Stephanie, if you're allowed to comment on this stuff, I'm looking at the articles in Open Warfare, bullies leading the Libs, and one of his hench persons is MP Anne-Marie Herman. What's her story? And why would it seems to me there is a war, not on women, but a particular select group of women called conservative women, which the Liberal Party, that's the basis, well, used to be anyway, of their following. What's going on with Sandra?
Yeah. Look, I think everyone is very surprised and disappointed to see Anne-Marie get caught up in this, particularly having come from a conservative background herself.
Yeah.
But I think also another woman that is worth noting who is also part of the leadership team is Georgie Crozier. She is standing by and letting male colleagues bully young female colleagues over these issues. And the minutes from the meeting were published in The Australian last night. If you read through the contributions to that meeting, there were strong arguments made in defence of Moira, and the men who signed that petition, Matt Back and David Southwick, provided no defence to their motion to expel Moira. But Georgie Crozier stood up and said there's been an ongoing problem. There's been several things that she said before, which says to me this is not actually about the Nazi issue. It's about her view. And this is really an indictment on where John Bastion and his leadership team stand on women's rights. And they are happy to bully and push women aside to form this new brand, whatever that is. Bastion keeps talking about reforming the party. He's never actually outlined what those reforms are. But they're going to move anyone in their way that doesn't fit the criteria.
You're a brave woman, I got to tell you, Stephanie. And thanks for coming on today. I saw the tweet. Someone from the Liberal Party actually sent me the tweet this morning and said, you've got to get her on. And I thank you so much. And thank you to the Women's Forum. I'm going to give you the last word, and then please tell us where we can find you. Where can all these wonderful women and men get the information that you're giving out? So is there anything you want to add in this whole situation with the conservative parties? It seems to me that there is no conservative party anymore, except for maybe One Nation, and we have one of their leaders coming on later, but a couple of them. How do these guys find their way back? They're digging such a hole for themselves.
Look, I disagree that there are no conservative parties left. I think the founding values of the Liberal Party still stand, and there are many good MPs at a state and federal level across Australia who embrace those values. What we're seeing play out in the media at the moment is a public war on what those values are, and there's some who would rather that we represent the teal so they can hold their inner city seats, and that is coming at the expense of people in the suburbs and the regional areas. So I think if people really care about politics and they care about political parties and parties of government, they really should be getting involved in a political party that represents their values, not only to have their voices heard, but to support the good people in there who are already fighting for them.
Yeah.
So, and having said that, Women's Forum is apolitical. We don't support any political party. We support good policies. You can find us. We have a website, womensforum.org. We're on Facebook and Twitter. So, yes, give us a like or a follow or subscribe to our email list, and you can keep in touch with us that way.
Well, Stephanie, I can assure you after today, our community is going to love you, and I'd love to bring you back on just to feature you and what you're doing with Women's Forum. Thanks so much for being part of Let the Mothers Speak today. I appreciate your time.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. My next guest is a lady, and I say lady because she is a lady, and a lawyer. But before I bring her on, I want to show you a couple of video clips, and I want to comment and then introduce my next guest. Can we run these videos? Thanks.
I started off being like, I understand, I have empathy for you, I will use your pronouns of choice. You know, I'm not going to say you're a woman, but you're a trans woman. And now I am realizing that all of those things are gateway drugs to the co-opting of female sports and the word female and the word woman and breastfeeding and childbearing and menstruation, all the things that are under solidly the list of what is a woman. You don't know the first thing about being a woman. You have no idea what the average woman has been through the course of her life, the challenges we have, the beauty of being a woman, the softness of being a woman, and you never will. And I'm done engaging in this fiction, Paul. I'm done. I have empathy, I have compassion, but I am not willing to abandon truth in the name of sparing feelings.
And that's why I love Megan Kelly, folks. I want to play you another video clip and just had a good look at Megan, and obviously Megan's a woman, but let's have a look at the next one.
Like the articles written about me using he pronouns and calling me a man over and over again. And I feel like that should be illegal. I don't know. That's just bad journalism. Like the articles written about me using he.
That was Megan Kelly, a woman. That is Dylan Mulvaney, a guy dressed as a woman, identifies as a woman, who in one foul swoop managed to drop the stocks of Bud Light by billions of dollars. Now, I want to reiterate, I don't care what you want to be. I am no one's moral judge or trying to be anyone's conscience here. But that's not a woman. Have a look at what one Bride magazine posted on the cover of, this is it, Bride magazine puts hairy man in dress on latest cover. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want that walking down the aisle. Marrying me, well, I'm already married, but I mean, honestly, at what point do women say enough is enough? And with that in mind, someone that the Liberal Party should have backed but didn't, a lady that I really enjoy listening to, Catherine Deves. Welcome to Let the Mothers Speak, Catherine. Thanks for being part of the program today. I think we've got Catherine here, but we've just frozen. Okay, we're going to try and get Catherine back. We've got it's frozen there, but we will defrost it. The issue is, see, it's almost like mental health has become a public right. And again, we are to love all people, but it doesn't mean that I have to agree with everybody and everything they say. When a guy like Dylan Mulvaney gets up and says, I think it should be illegal. Well, we could use the same rhetoric in regards to what he is doing. We could say, hey, maybe that should be illegal. And honestly, I don't think we have any kind of case for that, nor am I espousing that. Just want to make it clear. So, folks, let me just say to you, there is a trend here where there is the de-womenizing of women, and it's not good. Kids today have got enough challenges trying to work out issues that you and I probably never had to deal with, the divorce rate and everything else. And there is gender dysphoria out there. And rather than trying to help, it seems to me that we are supporting activism at the expense of our children. And that will lead to devastation. Mark my words. I've worked with teenagers for many, many years, and the last thing they need is having to emasculate or cut off their breasts as young teenage girls when they haven't figured out anything yet. And one of the people out there, I think we've got her back on now, is I believe she's a great spokesperson and lady, Catherine Deuce. How are you, Catherine?
Hi, Pat. Thanks so much for having me on. Apologies for the slight technical difficulties. I'm sort of in the city working today, so yeah, on the move a little bit.
Catherine, thanks so much for your time. I know you're a busy lady, a lawyer and mum, and doing a great job. What happened to you when you started to speak out down there in New South Wales, and what can we do as a community in regards to all of this?
So I made a calculated decision to speak out in defence of sport for women and girls. I think it was way back in 2019, 2020. And I knew that I would receive pushback for that. I could potentially deny myself particular job opportunities. And then obviously I ran in the federal election, and we saw what happened there when you see women who stand up against the prevailing narrative and want to fight for women's biological rights, want to fight for the safeguarding of children. So what I would say to all the listeners out there, I know a lot of people are in positions where they cannot speak freely, they cannot speak at work, they cannot speak in their private lives, but to get behind the women and indeed the men who stand with us as well, get behind them, support them. If they're running campaigns, raise donations for particular things, supporting them anonymously on social media, write them letters of support, because sometimes it's really hard going and you just might get that one email from someone that says how important it is that you are fighting the battle that they can't fight, and it empowers you to keep going.
What do you see as the dangers with this whole movement, which I think is anti-women? What are the dangers to our kids? You're a mum, a businesswoman, lawyer. What do you see as the dangers of our culture pushing this radical, crazy, dysphoric agenda on our kids?
Well, they're coming for women. As we know, women now no longer exist as a legal degree in Australia. They are coming for children. They are coming for families. They are coming from the foundational foundations of our society. We know that family is the foundation of our society, and that's what they're seeking to intrude upon. They're seeking to indoctrinate our children. They're seeking to remove safeguards for women. And they are seeking to remove the right of parents to protect their children from these dangerous ideologies. So in my view, this is the time where those of us who care about family, care about our children, care about children at all, need to stand up and push back.
One of the things that concerns me is the confusion, because these people all come from families, and that nurturing environment that a woman can only bring. A male cannot do that. It's almost like there's a confusion of roles in the community right now. Can you give us a bit of insight how we can return to basics?
Well, absolutely. The mother-child dyad is completely devalued and dismissed. And I think that this is where we've gone too far with the equality argument, because the things that fathers bring to the table for families and children are very different to the things that mothers bring. And I think that, in trying to pretend that, being the ones who are pregnant, who give birth, who then provide the care for children, particularly when they're very little, to pretend that this is, not, this is instinctive to women. We cannot pretend that men can do the same thing as us when it comes to mothering and fathering. They are very different things. And I think that we need to go back and start acknowledging that there are different between the sexes. And that should not necessarily, determine.
Yeah, I think we've lost a bit of the transmission there with Catherine. But Catherine, thank you so much for being on there, and we'll try and get Catherine on at another stage. But I want to say publicly thank you to Catherine Deves and for all she's doing. So some challenges there. But hey, we move on to the next thing. Now, one of the things that is really concerning to all Australians right now is this voice. Our Prime Minister has given us sketchy, no detail, goes up to Alice Springs, spends enough time to have an ice cream and leaves, but spends more time at the tennis. And it seems to me that while our country is falling apart economically, morally, politically, and everything else, it keeps pushing this voice. And of course, now it's almost every time you get on a plane, you get a welcome to country. Well, my great friend James McPherson, and I've got some special guests from the Indigenous community coming on as leaders to speak in a minute. He did a great monologue, and James is a brilliant guy. I often say, when people ask me what would be my favourite vacation, I say 2 weeks in James McPherson's head. But I want you to hear this monologue that he did to Prince Charles as a welcome to country. Let's run the tape.
King Charles has expressed concern that he might not be welcome in Australia. But I want to assure King Charles III he has nothing to worry about. He will most certainly receive a welcome to country. In fact, if he does visit these shores, he will be welcomed to country so many times he'll likely begin to wish we weren't so welcoming. Now, I understand why King Charles is concerned. He's afraid that people are still upset that 200 years ago his forebears arrived and turned what was effectively a desert wilderness into a rich first world country. But honestly, King Charles, that's all in the past. These days, we're all about reconciliation, which means the welcome mat is well and truly out. Now, if the King is looking for a welcome, he should arrive in Australia on a Qantas flight. I promise you, King Charles, from the moment the wheels of your aircraft touch the ground, you will be well and truly welcomed. You'll be reminded, as all of us are every time we fly, that you are on Aboriginal land. It's our little way of saying, welcome, invader. You see, King Charles, or as Senator Lydia Thorpe called your mother, coloniser, it always was, always will be Aboriginal land. So, welcome. I promise you'll be welcomed like this wherever you go. That's how welcoming we are these days. Many Australians have been welcomed so many times, we're now asking to stop being welcomed. But here's how friendly Aussie culture now is. Even though most of us don't want to be welcomed, our political and cultural elites insist on it. Even though I was born here, and my parents before me were born here, and my grandparents before them were born here, I'm still welcome to country everywhere I go. At public gatherings, in work meetings, even at sporting events, the welcome never wears out. You ask if you'll be welcome in Australia, King Charles? We pay people to welcome us at every event. If there's a more welcoming country in the world, Australians haven't heard of it. I assure you that wherever your motorcade takes you, through any city in Australia, you'll see a sign saying, welcome to Gadigal country, or some other Aboriginal tribal name with the word country juxtaposed to it. This is our way of reminding you that you weren't here first and that your arrival pretty much stuffed up paradise. So again, welcome. Now, word may have filtered back to Buckingham Palace about an incident last year when the welcome to country, due to be given before an AFL game, was withdrawn. But I want to assure His Majesty the cancellation of that welcome had nothing to do with a lack of friendliness or generosity of spirit. It's just that it happened to coincide with a minute's silence to honour the passing of your mother, Queen Elizabeth II, who, despite having done only good her entire life, we blame for genocide. You're welcome. You're welcome, as long as you get here soon. I say that because Aboriginal activist and advisor to the Prime Minister, Marsha Langton, has warned that if Australians vote no at a referendum for an Indigenous voice to Parliament, none of us will ever receive a welcome to country ever again. Which, ironically, if she makes good on her threat, just might make Australia even more welcoming. So come on down, King Charles. You always were and always will be most welcome in the Commonwealth of Australia.
Listen, that was brilliant, and I love James' sarcasm, but he's got a point. I'm over being welcomed to my own country. Now, if you want to start recognising, how about we start recognising the Italians? Half the food you eat, you wouldn't have if it wasn't for the Italians. Matter of fact, half the buildings you've got wouldn't be around if it wasn't for the Italians. Most of the concrete that you see out there. And by the way, what about our Lebanese and Greek people? What about the great contributions they have made? You see, the incredible thing is that most Indigenous people that I speak to on both sides don't even know what The Voice is. Matter of fact, when they explained to me what Welcome to Country is, it was they, as their own people, welcoming tribes from across other lands into theirs. Not to cause divide, but to create unity. This Welcome to Country is nothing but a white guy's virtual signaling by a bunch of elitist, left-wing, crazy people, including Malcolm Turnbull, I might add. This has done nothing to help our nation. And today I've got some special guests, and I've invited quite a few from the Indigenous community to be part of this program today. But Pastor Robert and Julie, you say, Robert? Well, Robert today is identifying as a woman. Joke, folks. They are leaders, Indigenous leaders that travel around Australia helping all people, particularly Indigenous people. I want to welcome Pastor Julie and Pastor Robert Knight to the program. Thanks for being on here today, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
It's great to have you guys on. I want to ask you a question. You as Indigenous leaders, have you had any say in this voice at all?
No, we never.
No, we never.
None whatsoever.
How does that make you feel as leaders in the Indigenous community, and well-known leaders, by the way? How does it make you feel?
It makes us feel like we're a part of the divide, and that's what the voice means to us. United we stand, divided we fall, and we don't need to have it in a constitution. That we can work together, we can be one, because we see the voice as the biggest land grab there is. Oh. And so we're saying to all the listeners out there, non-Indigenous leaders and non-Indigenous people and any Australians, that we say no. No to the voice, because it's tokenism, and tokenism will divide our country. It'll split our nation down the middle. And we want to be united as one from our hearts, not from a constitution that we can change our mind every time we look at it. But we just want to say that our opinion to this is that the voice will not fix Australia. It'll take away the human rights of the Indigenous people.
So it'll not only divide Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal, but it'll also divide Aboriginal and Aboriginal.
Yeah. Why is it that they almost making it sound, actually not almost, they are making it sound that if you don't vote yes, you're racist, you're this, you're that. And yet here are two beautiful Indigenous people that are serving the community in the coalface, I might add, not wearing Gucci and Armani and walking into Parliament receiving paychecks. What springs into your heart and your spirit when you see this divide?
It's literally war. There's always been a great divide, and we're always been told about closing the gap. This divides our nation even further. And we do have a voice in Parliament. It's called the Department of Indigenous Affairs. And it's been very fair if you put in a need for community money to benefit all people in the community, all Indigenous people. It's weighed up, and if you succeed, you succeed. But having a voice only for Indigenous people is, of course, going to bring trouble. And we see that it's only a piece of paper, and behind it, now we can apply for our significant sites, and with great, they don't give it easily, but you can fight for it. But when we get the voice, we won't get nothing. We'll have no human rights whatsoever. And I believe we can do this without a constitution change. And the reason why they're giving it to the referendum, because we make up possibly 5% of the Australian population, but they need 75% to change the constitution. Has no benefits for the Aboriginal people except the leaders who are now selling us out on a daily basis. And we want to say that it's rot and it's a lie, and we recognise it from a distance.
You see,
Pastor Robert, Pastor, go ahead. Yes, go ahead, Robert. Go ahead.
The government has a nice way of prettying up ugly. And I see an ugly side to The Voice, and I don't like it one bit, and that's why I will always vote no.
Wow,
It'll be a
what
no from all of our colleagues and the people we come who ask us our opinion. We say vote no. You don't have to feel guilty. This is guilty for both sides, and there'll be no benefits. So all you listeners today, vote no, because they need 75% of the population, and we Australian Aboriginal people, we don't hold that position. And
do you know what I find very sad is that The Voice is only for a select few voices, but no one there has ears to hear. And you know, I'm not going to get all Christian everywhere, but the Bible does say, "Who has ears to hear, let him hear." They're not hearing the Jacinta Prices. They're not hearing the Warren Mundines. They're not hearing your voices. It seems to me that it's another grab. Again, another grab. And to me, it's all about Albanese trying to enshrine himself as some major leader. As leaders of the community, do you see that, or what do you feel about that?
Yes, we totally agree. That's exactly what we see. We see Albanese as a fake and a liar. Why don't you start telling the truth to the people and removing the guilt and sitting down at the table, firstly with the people that the grassroots people have been totally ignored in this whole situation.
Yeah. You know, it's amazing. I went up to Alice Springs and we spent a few days there and invited by Indigenous leaders, female I might add. And what was interesting is how we were treated going up there by some religious lefty people. We were told we couldn't speak on a church lawn, yet on the Saturday they had the gay Mardi Gras. And again, I'm not anti-gay. I'm not anti any of that stuff. If people have a free will before God. But how much of this do you feel, and this is the last question I'll ask you, how much of this do you think is more of a grab for elites and political power? Or do you believe that?
We totally believe that. It's 100%. What would you say, Robert?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, you know, it's there's some little hidden lying underneath that are not, the government hasn't really been open to us. They haven't been really telling us the truth. So, you know, to me, anything that the government puts up, it's just like waving little carrots in front of us and all that kind of stuff, and we don't like it.
Come and talk with us.
You know, that never gets down to the grassroots level.
You know, last night we were talking, Pastor Robert and Pastor Shirley, and I said what I found out is how deeply spiritual the Indigenous people and intuitive the Indigenous people of this nation are. And when voices like yours say, beware, say no, we need to listen to your voice, because you're not in this for the politics or the money or the grab. So I want to thank you today for being part of this today, and God bless you in all you do. And we'll have you on again and see. Let's get out there and do some work among the Indigenous people. I'll take you up on that offer, and let's. God bless you. Thank you so much for being part of today.
God bless.
One of the problems also facing our nation, and particularly for women, is the problem we're having with youth crime, the problems we're having with teenagers. And of course, a lot of these youths are being brought up in single homes, which is difficult. And basically, the disrespect shown to women is manifesting itself in many, many ways. But when political parties today push and want to support shooting galleries. Now, I warned this before the last election, that the Greens and the Labor were pushing hard for shooting galleries for heroin. And people poo-pooed that. As a matter of fact, I was at a meeting where all the various candidates were there in my area where I live, and I asked the Greens and the Labor their position on shooting galleries for heroin. They didn't know it. And they admitted it publicly. Now, the Greens in Victoria, and I'm going to have a Victorian MP on in a second, are hell-bent on pushing addictions down our kids' throat. Adam Bant said in a tweet a little while ago to Years 12 students, congratulations on what you've done, whether you want to become a lawyer, whether you want to become a doctor, or whether you just want to spend a couple of years smoking dope. Well done. And Australia, you voted for this moron. He has no moral compass at all. Anne Albanese bows and worships at the shrine of Adam Bant. Now, I played a video before of James McPherson, but I want every parent to watch this. This is happening in Victoria. Matter of fact, it's not only in Victoria. The former Premier Bob Carr and I had some words many, many years ago when he opened up the first shooting gallery, and they continue to do so. I want you, I've asked James if we could have permission to use this. I need you to listen. Every parent needs to be listening to this monologue by James. Let's run the tape.
The Victorian Greens want children to be able to inject themselves with drugs at a government injecting facility, which raises the question, what drugs are the Victorian Greens on? The Victorian Parliament will debate this week whether to make the North Richmond supervised injecting facility permanent. The facility opened in 2018 and has been used by well over 500,000 people, with around 6,000 overdoses being managed on site. Controversially, the site is located next to a primary school, and local residents are furious.
Someone with half a brain would think that this is not appropriate next to a primary school.
But sadly, people with half a brain are difficult to find in Victoria and completely absent from the Greens. Rather than suggest the injecting facility be moved away from the primary school, the Greens are suggesting the injecting facility be opened up to students. Honestly, progressive politics is now an inside joke where politicians and activists compete to see who can come up with the most ridiculous proposal and then laugh together at how far they can push it. Greens drug harm spokesman Ave Pugelli said the idea to let kids shoot up was based on expert health advice. You have to love it when politicians trot out the old expert health advice line in defence of the indefensible, as if the rest of us are supposed to suddenly discard our common sense because a 20-something-year-old artist turned Greens politician used those magical words. You know, as a father of 2 teenage boys, I wouldn't normally agree to kids using heroin, but, well, if a Greens says there's been expert health advice, well, OK. I'd sure like to hear from the health expert recommending taxpayers help kids maintain their drug habit. The Greens also want pregnant women to be able to use heroin at the drug injecting facility because, well, you can't start children on drugs too soon, can you? I'm going to bet I could find more experts willing to advise that Victoria would be healthier without the Greens. But I digress. Greens MP Tim Reid explained to Neil Mitchell today how preventing kids from using the injecting room to get high on heroin would be a form of discrimination. Yep, that was seriously his argument. He said that when the injecting room was first proposed, there were rules against kids using it. But those rules were never put in place because the Greens actually believed kids shouldn't use the injecting room.
Now, we understand why those rules were put in. They were put in really to make the whole thing politically acceptable when the legislation first went through Parliament.
Right. And now that the injecting room is up and running, the Greens argue that turning away kids who want to stick a needle in their arm, well, that would amount to a form of prejudice.
This is now a health service. It's functioning as a health service. They're treating, I think, something like 6 overdoses a day. And so, you know, we don't tell people they can't come into the emergency department because they're doing things we disapprove of.
Well played, Greens. Well played. But Greens MP Tim Reid wasn't done with his rhetorical gymnastics. Listen to this.
You know, it's a slippery slope when health workers start saying, oh, I don't like what you did, so not going to treat you.
Slippery slope. So the Greens say we need injecting rooms. But don't worry, it's only for adults at risk of overdosing, and we'd never let pregnant women or children use it. And then, when it's up and running, they say, well, if kids want to use it, you can't turn them away. We'd never deny kids medical care.
You'll be advocating, I'm not saying comfortable with, but you'll be advocating a child of any age, provided they could inject themselves using heroin there.
Yes, but bear in mind, I think let's use the language accurately, that what we're advocating for is that they are not turned away.
Yep, kids of any age should be allowed to shoot up. But the thing we need to be careful about is using the language accurately. The Greens have a history of tacitly approving drug use among minors. A couple of years ago, Greens leader Adam Bant tweeted, "To everyone who's just wrapped up Year 12 today, it doesn't matter what your ATAR is or what your next plans are, whether you want to be a lawyer, artist, miner, or just smoke weed for a year or two. I'm proud of you. This has been a bloody tough year. Props for making it." Of course, the degenerate policies of the Victorian Greens would never encourage drug use among children, would they?
Could I put a scenario to you, and this would be entirely possible, I'd assume. A couple of cynical 16-year-olds say, I wouldn't mind trying that stuff. Let's go down there and do it. We'll be safe.
Well, if they're going to do it, I'd rather they did it in the centre. I'd rather, if they can't be good, I'd rather they were careful. And I'm not going to advocate for them going to buy the stuff, but if they're going to do it, I'd rather they did it with a nurse nearby so that they get home that night.
Well, it's good to know that the Greens aren't advocating for children to go out and buy heroin yet.
Now, before I introduce my next guest, if you're not going to be good, be careful. You had 6,000 overdoses. I've worked with teenagers, spent most of my life reaching teenagers, over 1 million in this country's high schools, built the largest youth organisation and was a director of Teen Challenge, resurrected it from basic bankruptcy in New South Wales. So I know something about this. I want you to listen to me and listen to me very clearly. Drugs don't make you cool. Drugs don't make you popular. Drugs make you dead. Let me spell it for you. D-E-D. And any political party who wants to sacrifice our children at the altar of witchcraft, pharmacare, same thing we saw 2 years ago, they ought to be kicked out. But the lefties and the teals want your kids, they want them addicted because it makes them addicted to the system and addicted to the handouts. It's about control. And Adam Bant and his fascist party ought to hang themselves in shame. And I've got no problem calling them fascists because that's what they are. If you don't agree with them, we'll vilify you, we'll run you out of town, we'll mock you, we'll make fun of you, we'll take you to court, we'll try and silence you like they're trying to do to my friend Pauline Hanson. And Albanese worships at the shrine of their opinion. God help us in this country. Well, one mother and great leader is the Honourable Ricky Lee Tyrrell, MLC. Ricky Lee Tyrrell is One Nation's first ever representative of the Parliament of Australia, elected in 2022 to the Legislative Council, a working mum with 2 aged children. Both her and her husband were farmers, 5th generation dairy producers. Ricky Lee, thanks for being on today. I get fired up about this stuff.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I can understand why. It's really easy to get fired up over something like this.
Well, you're in Victoria. When you listen to that nonsense, as a mum, what do you feel like? I mean, I feel like slapping them upside the head and knocking some, but we can't talk like that on these platforms. But what do you feel as a mother and as society that's happening to our kids?
Look, I'm disgusted. They saying if kids think, oh yeah, I want to go shoot up some heroin for the first time, they're making it so easy for them to access it with these rooms. This day and age, our teenagers are so lazy. So they'd have, if they wanted to start heroin, they'd have to go out and they'd have to find somebody. They'd have to get off their butts and actually put in some effort if they really wanted to do it without these injecting rooms. If these injecting rooms aren't available, they can just walk in and say, hey, let's try this. It's appalling.
Ricky Lee, tell everyone your story because they may not be aware of your story where you had to sell up your farm. Everyone looks at you now, you're out there, you're a great leader, but tell us a little bit about what you had to go through as a mum and a wife and that brought you to this place where you are now.
So we moved to the area here, it's north of Shepparton, in 2017. My husband and I purchased our first dairy farm together on our own, and the drought came to town with us. It wasn't until I noticed everybody else in the area going through the same thing with water. There was a lot of water in the river, and I couldn't understand why farmers weren't able to access it as easily as they should have been. I asked some questions, and I realised that the water legislation was just doing them over. So schools were shutting down, businesses were closing, and local families that had been here for generations were packing up and leaving. So I stepped up and I put my hand up, and here I am now.
Victoria is in a mess right now, and it seems like John Pesutto is adding more mess to the mess that's already there. Why are they so anti-conservative women? I mean, it seems like...
We're tough. We're tougher than a lot of the boys there at Parliament. We've got a backbone. We've got integrity. We know what we want. We know what we need. We're willing to fight for our children's futures. And I think a lot of these boys are really intimidated by that. And so they're doing their best to gag the ladies. But these ladies that are going through what they're going through at the moment, I know these girls personally, and they are fantastic women. And I'm there to support them every step of the way to make sure that they stay there and stand their ground, because Victoria does need these girls there.
Now, let me get this right, and this is the integrity of this woman. She's there to support a woman in Parliament who is not even of her own political party.
Yep. No, that's right. Look, we've got a lot of our values align a lot, and I know exactly what they stand for. And at the end of the day, we are all colleagues. We're all there for the same reason, to do what's best for Victoria. And if they're going to do what I see is actually needed for Victoria, then I'm backing them 100%.
Ricky Lee, we've got a lot of people out there in farming communities. We've just been up in Boonah up here in Queensland, and we do a lot of our meetings in regional centres, not necessarily the big cities. And I know a lot of the women that watch and a lot of the people that watch, they're great people. And how hard is it today for women economically? How tough is it out there for them at the moment?
It is. Look, it's really tough. I'm blessed because I do have a full-time job that does pay well, but I am still watching what we spend, how much we're spending. The cost of living is insane. I still pay attention to every dollar I spend. I'm the one that does the grocery shopping for the family every week. So I know exactly how much it costs. The cost of fuel, everything. I'm looking for a house for my family and I at the moment. So I'm finding it so hard to do that. And I can only imagine what other people are going through right now. I have been at rock bottom, so I know exactly what it feels like. And that's what gives me the fuel to keep going for everybody else. Because when I think back to the drought and what we went through and when we had to sell our farm, it still makes me choke up. It took me 48 hours to practice my maiden speech because I kept breaking down when I came to that subject. So I know exactly what
what was it like having to do your maiden speech with all of that weight on you, all of that weight of the burden of that losing the farm?
It was hard. It took a lot of practice. I feel sorry for the tour group for coming through when I was standing in the chamber trying to practice, because I kept crying and they're probably thinking, who is this fool that's supposed to be representing us? She can't speak. I had to desensitize myself to it a bit, but I did get it out. On the day, I punched it out and it flowed fantastically. And it was good to get that out. I needed people to understand that I've been at rock bottom. I know I can resonate with everybody else in my community how hard it is to go through what we went through.
I'm going to ask you one last question, but you're with One Nation, and Pauline's a great friend of our community. She was advertised to be on today. Her office called me, circumstances beyond her control and mine. She's not able to be here today, but people need to get behind Pauline. Whether you are Labor, Liberal, or One Nation, what she's facing right now with these Greens trying to bankrupt her is unbelievable, and it is evil, and we need to support her. What words of encouragement can you give to women right now, and men, by the way? This is not we got both audiences here that are doing it tough. What words of encouragement, oxygen of the soul, can you give them today?
Stick at it. Find what you need to keep you going. With me, it was my family. my kids. I look at them and I think, if I can't stand up and be strong for you, nobody else will. And that's all I needed. I'm real stubborn. If I've got something that I need to do, I'll keep going. If something blocks your way, turn a different direction and just keep on going until you find your way through. That's what I do.
Ricky Lee, thanks for being part of Let the Mothers Speak today. You're a great mum, a great leader, great wife, and we honour you today, and God bless you in all you do.
Thank you very much, Pat.
Welcome. Do you know, I am concerned for people. I'm certainly concerned for them on a financial basis. And one of the things that I've launched right now, guys, and I'm just going to do a short mention of this. Every week I do mentoring. People ask me, Pat, can you mentor us? Can you mentor us? And we want to mentor you, a particular area of mindset. Now, please don't be put off by the name of this, called the Millionaire Mindset. It's not about making millions of dollars. It's about your mindset and your mindset growing. So I've launched our mentorship program, which basically gives you access to me for $1. And if you like it, you trial it for $1 for the first month. If you like it, it's then $47 a month thereafter. But every month I do teaching. Then we have someone who's like, let's call them a super coach, that comes in and inspires, teaches, and gives you practical tools on how to build. On the third week, we get on board and we do some one-on-one stuff with you. We randomly select someone. And on the fourth week, we have a question and answer time where you can ask me questions on any levels, whether it's political, financial, or anything else. On top of that, I give you access to my vault. Over the last 44 years, I've developed a vault of material and information which you can access, and we've created a home study along with a video to our pathways to prosperity. And this is not about trying to sell you something, but it's about trying to help you. Our minds are being attacked and bombarded, and we need to put a fence around our minds. The battleground for humanity is in their mindset. So I'm going to ask my team to put up on the screen the link there for those of you that would like to join our Millionaire Mindset Club. It's $1, $1, and then $47 afterwards after that. We've got so many people joining this at a phenomenal rate. And on top of that, you get access to my Pathways to Prosperity Home Study. Excuse me for that. My Pathways to Prosperity Home Study, our vault of material, expert coaches and trainers. Some of the people that you see here, you will get up close and personal with. Now, it's not a big group. We don't want it to be big. But for $1, that's basically not a lot of money. Everyone can afford that. And then if you like it after the first month's trial, it's $47 a month. Join our Millionaire Mindset Club. After all, we are supported by what you do with us in our community. And as many of you know, for many, many, many years now, I've been a prosperity activist. The latest government statistics show that women over 55 are going to be hit the hardest in the next coming budget. They're coming for you. They're coming for your super. They're coming for your kid. There is nothing out there that they're not going to come and try and assault and take off you. So you've got to build reserves. My next guest, I've asked her to come and share, is not only a businesswoman, and she's zooming in from Europe, I might say. My great friend Karina Essa, I've seen her build empires. Now listen to me very carefully. I've asked her to come today as a mother because she's been a foster carer to many, many, many children, her and her wonderful husband, Steve Essa. And Karina's a bit of a shy person, and I've asked her to do a presentation for you on how you can really crawl your way out of this mess and beat inflation. And I've asked Karina to come. Now, remember, this is a nurturing lady. She doesn't want to come on camera. She's going to do a presentation behind slides. I've got a giveaway after this. Listen very carefully. I've got a big giveaway to gift everybody, my latest book. And also you're going to hear from Alexandra Marshall. So without further ado, a freedom fighter, a great mum, a great human being and humanitarian, my great friend, Karina Essa. And let me just say this. What I've asked her to share is something that, from my own personal experience, I will tell you works. She's just going to do a short dissertation for you. Karina, thanks for being part of Let the Mothers Speak today.
Thank you so much for having me, Pat. And wow, what amazing topics you covered today. We're in big trouble. All hell is about to break loose.
Well, Karina, I'm going to hand you the mic. Over to you, and share with us how women can really absolutely crush it in this economy.
Thank you so much, and welcome everyone. So what I'll be talking to you for the next few minutes before the next speaker is something that could explode in value 1,000 times, and it's a Web 3.0 asset. And what is exactly Web 3.0? You might have come across the term. So let me explain to you what it is. Well, it's the third phase of the internet. So first we had Web 1.0, which was back in the 90s, and it was really slow internet, read-only internet, and the information would come from directories in a nutshell. Then right now we're in Web 2.0, and it's a much more interactive internet because social media came, blogs came, and not only could we consume information, but we could also create and publish information. A third phase called Web 3.0, and it's going to be decentralized, meaning it won't be controlled by a small number of people. Like right now, for example, Facebook is controlled by a small group of people, etc. Any social media is controlled by a small group of people. Now it's going to be decentralized. We will actually own the information that we publish on social, everywhere on the internet. So that's Web 3.0. It's going to be decentralized. And the main features will be, of course, blockchain technology and cryptocurrency. That's the third phase of the internet. But now, what's great about Web 3.0 is that we're really at the early stages, and it's really the early adopters who get to make a lot of the money. So just to give you an example of what Web 3.0 will look like, it will look like exactly like Web 2.0, but it's going to be different because you're going to be in control of and own what's online, what you create. No one can take it down. It will be decentralized. So even the hosting, everything will be decentralized. Your money as well. You will own your money. You know, people cannot shut down your account like they're doing, especially in Melbourne. They did that. So it just looks exactly like the internet. However, the internet will be 3D. You'll be in the metaverse, so it's going to be 3D. And other than that, you'll be able to do anything that you're still doing now. So, for example, PayPal is a centralized website, but this one, Lynch, is a decentralized website, and it looks just like any website. So we're going from centralized to decentralized, and that's Web 3.0. And the defining features of Web 3.0, as I said, is going to be the metaverse, going to be cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. Now, the exciting opportunity, why am I saying this, is that Web 3.0 website domains will replace Web 1.0 website domains. So a website domain is basically the URL. So chances are you all have a website URL. So now the .com domains are going to be pretty much obsolete because we're going to have decentralized websites and decentralized hosting. And you cannot have a decentralized website and decentralized hosting with a .com standard domain. Instead, the extensions will be .x, .crypto, .blockchain, .bitcoin, .nft. So these are the extensions, like we have .com, .com.au, .net, etc. So what's the exciting opportunity here? Well, the exciting opportunity is that we're very, very early. And these blockchain domains, these Web 3.0 domains, haven't exploded in value. So you see the red dot here, we are here. So once there's mass adoption, these domain names just explode in value. So Web 3.0 domain names could be your second chance at buying high demand domain names very cheaply before they are sold for millions. So back in the 90s, don't know if you remember, but back in the 90s, there was this gold rush to buy website domains. So people were securing 1-word and 2-word domains and really popular domains very cheaply. But because people thought that the internet was a fad, a lot of people basically hadn't realized that the internet was going to be the future. Some people jumped on early, bought domains, and now they're multimillionaires because they own 1-word domain names like money.com, for example, or insurance.com, and now they're multimillionaires because they bought them back in the 90s. So For example, carinsurance.com was bought for a few dollars back in the 90s. Now it's worth $49 million. Insurance.com, $35 million. Private jet, $30 million. So these people, just from buying one website domain really early, before, of course, there was mass adoption of the internet, they became multimillionaires. So now it's our second chance. It's our second chance to buy really early Web 3.0 domain names. There's another gold rush now. It's like turning back the clock to prices from the 1990s when it comes to domain names. So you could own these domain names very cheaply, but there will be Web 3.0 domains. So for example, these are just examples of domain names, super popular domain names that are available right now for just a few dollars. Lifecoaching.blockchain is available right now for $10. Now, life coaching could become, could be worth $1 million, $3 million, $10 million. Discountprices.nft, another really popular domain name, only $20. So you can see we've really turned back the clock to the 1990s. Of course, they're being snapped up fast now because the more people talk about them, the more people buy them. So these are the ones, write them down, carb free. I mean, anything that's keto related, diet related, travel related, real estate related, money related, all these domains linked to billion-dollar industries are going to be snapped up fast. And then once you own them, you can resell them, hold on to them, and when there's mass adoption, then you just resell them for millions of dollars, like these people have who bought these .com domains. So, for example, someone bought the domain name sex.crypto, right? That one is now, the sex.com one is worth $12 million, but sex.crypto just sold for $90,000, $90,000, and we haven't even reached mass adoption. We're not in Web 3.0, and already people have bought them cheaply and resold them for thousands of dollars really quickly. But that's not the only one. Another Web 3.0 domain was bought 3 years ago for $1,000, so business.zil. Okay, so that's a Web 3.0 domain. And then that person 120x their money. They sold them for $120,000. So even now, people are making money. We haven't even reached mass adoption. People are multiplying their money, and I haven't, the ones I've bought, I haven't resold because I'm holding on to them tight until we reach mass adoption. But you don't have to. Some people are buying them, and then, a few months later, they resell them for thousands of dollars. So that is the opportunity for just $10, $20 of risk. Let's say it's not even a risk. You can really potentially 100x, 1,000x your money from owning these domain names. There's nothing for you to do. You just buy them and keep them. Now, what's great about these Web 3.0 domain names is that you actually own them. With standard domains, you don't own them. You just rent them out. People think that when they buy a domain, they own the domain. They don't. They rent them out because after 2 years, you have to pay renewal fees. But with a Web 3.0 domain, once you buy it, you pay it once. There are no renewal fees. You own them for life, for life. So, for example, I bought a .com domain name, and of course, after 2 years, they said, well, renew it or you lose it. So pay more or you lose that domain. So you see that with standard domains, you don't actually own it unless you pay rent for it. Well, with Web 3.0 domains, you own them for life, zero renewal fees. So you spend $20, $40 one-off, you own it for life, and you can resell it potentially for thousands of dollars when we reach mass adoption. And Web 1.0 domains are so easy to hack. And I'm pretty sure some of you here on this call have been hacked, right? No one's immune to hacking with centralized domain names, with standard domain names. Well, with Web 3.0, they're very hard to hack, extremely hard to hack. Now, what can you do with the domain name? I don't do anything with these Web 3.0 domains. What I do is I keep them. I'm going to sell them when they explode in value. So that's my target. So my target is to turn $40 into $100,000, $200,000. So I'm holding on to them. But some people resell them straight away after a few months because they are going up in value every single day. Or you can build a decentralized website with it. You can actually use it. Or you can use it to receive and send cryptocurrencies. Some people are using them as digital wallet addresses. So there are many things you can do with these Web 3.0 domains. Personally, just full disclosure, I'm not doing anything with them. I'm just keeping them as investments, and I'm going to resell them when they're above 6 figures. So for example, with cryptocurrencies, some of you might be familiar, you have what's called a digital wallet, and you can send cryptocurrencies from one wallet to another and receive cryptocurrencies, and you have a wallet address. Now this wallet address, as you can see here, is a long long string of numbers and letters, and it's not really user friendly. But if you want to make it user friendly, you can use a Web 3.0 domain. For example, I can buy karinaesa.x as a Web 3.0 domain and use it and set it up so I use it as a wallet address. Again, that's optional as well, but you can still use it while you own it, of course. So how do you buy one? How do you actually buy one? How do you jump on this opportunity? I know that Pat has bought quite a few, and I have bought quite a few, and the whole basically community have bought quite a few because they've seen the opportunity here. So where do you go? You go to Unstoppable Web Domains. So that's the place. That's the place you buy them. And in the search box here, you type in a domain name. So you can buy your own name if you want. So I bought Karina Essa, Pat bought Pat Mesiti, of course. And you can buy other domains, for example, life coaching, or weight loss tips, or carb-free diets, or keto meals, things like that, right? Any domain that inspires you that you believe will explode in value. And you type them in all together, okay, no spaces. You click on search, and then it will tell you the domains that are available. So for example, you won't believe this, but moneytips.nft, I will tell Pat to buy it actually, because he gives plenty of money tips, and I think he should own this domain, but that's another story. So moneytips.nft, only $20, right? So that domain has the potential, not in 10 years time, I'm talking about a year or two, to basically explode in value, literally explode in value, because things are moving fast, and we're entering Web 3.0, the third phase of the internet, really, really fast. So moneytips.nft you can buy now for $20. You can buy moneytips.x for $100. And all these other extensions, you can buy one extension, all the extensions, whatever you want. You add to cart. Okay, you add to cart, and then you continue to cart. So that's the second step, and then you just pay with your credit card. You pay with your credit card, and that's it. You own it for life. That's all you have to do. So it's really small risk, a 3-step process, and you own these domain names that people are going to really want to own. So that was what I wanted to share with you today. Just a quick tip before I go: don't do domain name squatting. So what is domain name squatting? Don't go and buy someone else's name that is actually illegal. So don't go and buy other brand names as a domain name, or other famous people's names as a domain name. So don't go and buy Apple or Nike or Madonna, because that is called domain name squatting. You can buy domain names that are keywords, just keywords like keto meals, weight loss tips, money tips, whatever, but you can't actually go and buy domain names of other people's names. Okay, that is actually illegal. They can ask you to give it back. So that's just a quick tip. Now, if you want more tips, I was only given a few minutes today, of course, because other speakers are coming. But if you want more ideas like that, I have plenty. And there are these that can potentially 1,000x in value. So with just $10, $20, you could earn 6 figures potentially. So I've got plenty of other ideas that I'd love to share with you. And if you're interested, I'm running a training next week live. So we'll get to interact. You'll get to talk to me, ask me questions. Go to alliancedigitaltraining.com/tutorial and register. So that will show me that you're interested. You want to find out all these tips. And then I will get online live and share you these other 3 ideas that I have that could potentially put a lot of money in your pocket for very little risk. I'm talking $10, $20. So you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. I really hope I see you next week live. To secure your spot, just go to alliancedigitaltraining.com/tutorial. So that's alliancedigitaltraining.com/tutorial. And if you want to grab yourself a domain or two like that, just to give it a go, for $20, $40, go to unstoppablewebdomains.com. So, Pat, over to you. Exactly 15 minutes. You asked me to be on for 15 minutes. I think you...
Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere, because one of the things, guys, that I tell people, and ladies, let me tell you, a man is not a financial plan. And I want to ask Karina some questions before she goes, because she's over there in Europe, but God knows what time she had to get up there to do this session. But I want my team to put that up on the screen again, please, that link. Now, Karina, I really believe that everything you need in life, you can learn. Now, you're going to be hosting a special event there, and how easy is it for people to learn? I mean, you've been an educator for many, many years.
Yes. Well, it's one thing to learn. You have to implement. So I think that people are overwhelmed with information now. They're focused, they're distracted, they stop and start. And the one thing you've always taught people is that, do one thing until successful. And that's what I really urge people to do. It's one thing to just learn, and it's another thing to just implement and move on to something else once you've implemented one thing, or else you get overwhelmed. You're just spinning your wheels and wasting your time.
Karina,
I actually believe I might have made a mistake with, if that link doesn't work, it could be alliancedigitaltraining.com/training. My bad. It could be that, I believe. So just tell people, try alliancedigitaltraining.com/training as well, if that link doesn't work.
All right. Well, if you I'm sure you can get on Facebook and post it in there later on, if all my team can do that. But Karina, you've built at least 6 multi-million-dollar businesses, as well as being a foster carer.
Yes.
People often say, I don't have time. Is this the kind of thing that requires copious amounts of time to make an extra, amount of a couple of $1,000s a month, or is something that they can do part-time?
Well, no, if it took a lot of time, I wouldn't be able to do it, because I do, it gets busy, as you know, my life gets very busy, juggling many things. So no, if it would take a lot of time, I wouldn't be able to do it personally.
Awesome. Well, guys, Karina, thank you so much. I've got Elon Musk and Alexandra Marshall on next, but go immediately, click on that link and avail yourself of this opportunity to spend some time with Karina. As I said, she's a real freedom fighter. Matter of fact, a lot of stuff that you see that's written, there's a little special mouse that helps me write my stuff. And we'll just leave that alone. People say, Pat, you write some great emails. I go, oh, yes, I do. Karina, thank you for all you're doing and all you're doing for a whole bunch of kids. And thank you for doing what you're doing for our community as well. Make sure you register for that, guys. It's going to be fantastic. Love to Steve and Karina. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
One of the people that has really confronted this woke culture, and well, he's not a she, and he doesn't identify one, but I saw this video, and before I bring on Alexandra Marshall and do a bit of a giveaway, I want to give away my book to everybody today. I want to play this video where Tucker Carlson is interviewing Elon Musk about, well, the video will speak for itself. Let's run the tape, guys.
So how do you run the company with only 20% of the staff?
It turns out you don't need that many people to run Twitter.
But 80%? That's a lot.
Yes. If you're not trying to run some sort of glorified activist organization and you're not care that much about censorship, then you can really let go of a lot of people, it turns out.
Well, there you go. You've heard it from the horse's mouth. The guy that bought the company says, I can run this thing on 20% if I'm not trying to run some glorified activist organization. And that's what a lot of these platforms are. Now, folks, Alexandra Marshall's coming, but I've written a book called Unbreakable, and I released it during the pandemic, and you can buy it, but today I want to give it away for free to everybody. And along with the book, I've gone into a studio and actually done an audio recording of the book. So I'm going to ask my team to put up that link there. This is free, okay? I'm not asking you to pay for it. It is free, okay? If you go to prayandpushback.com/push, I'm going to get my team to put that in the chat as well. You get my, I think it's about a 100-page book. It went as a bestseller. You get my book, and you also get me, it's actually me, going in the studio and reading the entire book to you so you can listen to it through your headphone. And that's a gift from us to you for being part of today. We're not done yet. I got one more thing to do just after Alexandra Marshall. But one of my favorite people, one of my favorite ladies who's been out there and who's really standing up for our values is Alexandra Marshall. And I've had to go in and pre-record this because of her busy schedule, what she's doing in television and everything else. But let's have a tune in to Alexandra. And guys, let's keep that link up on the screen, please. Here is Alexandra Marshall. Well, one of my favorite people on the planet, and I know our community absolutely loves her, is Alexandra Marshall. We affectionately call her Ellie. For those of you that don't know her, she is the online editor of Spectator magazine. If you have not subscribed, get onto it. And the creative director of ADH TV. Ellie, as if you didn't have enough to do, creative director of ADH TV, can you add any more arrows in your quiver?
I'm sure I can manage it somehow.
Now, Ellie, you had the distinct, position, I would say. I'd call it honor, I suppose, but to be present at the Let the Women Speak event, where you were there as a journalist. So we're not hearing secondhand, third hand, we're hearing firsthand. Can you give us your insights as to what happened on that day?
Well, I actually wasn't there, but one of our journalists was there and she wrote an article for us. And so what we did have was we had a first-hand woman on the ground there who was discussing what the atmosphere was like, and more particularly what the behaviour of Canberra and the Parliament was like, because they were quite surprised by the indifference of the politicians as to the safety of the women who were there at the rally. And they didn't afford them the normal courtesies that they should have, which is what surprised them the most. But basically, you know, society's always been divided by gender. So we've always had gendered spaces for men and women, particularly in things like bathing and, you know, when they go to the bathroom, they've always been separated, sports been separate. We've always had this separation. And then we had the feminist movement where some of the unfair disadvantages that were leveled at women were repaired, because obviously we wanted to live in a modern society where individuals had an opportunity to contribute as they wished. That was all fine. And then all of a sudden, after equality for a moment of history, we now have the situation where women are being told to shut up, to allow their rights to be eroded by a new class of privileged men. And yes, also men themselves are finding themselves victimized as well, because don't forget, this transgender debate goes both ways. But the crucial point is women can be more easily physically harmed by the introduction of men into these private spaces than the other way around, which is why the focus is particularly on women. Now, at this women's rally, suddenly we've gone from the feminist narrative of we want to listen to women, you know, empower women, and the press is all behind it, to no, the women literally aren't allowed to speak. So the Let Women Speak rally highlighted that the press and the media class do not believe in the ability of women to be allowed to speak up for their rights against privileged men. And that's what it was. It was an event that was designed to highlight this new truth that we live with.
Why is there this craze out there right now, a violent one, I might add, to basically silence women? Why? I mean, I don't understand. I'm a father of 3 daughters, 3 granddaughters. I want them to be strong. I want them to stand up for what they believe. What are they afraid of? Or is it just a madness of the times?
So the problem is, when you start to play victimhood politics and you start to assign privileges to certain classes of people, so a victim class is now entitled to additional privileges. When you create that system, which is what happened, women had some advantages over men. Now, that was really meant to be a balance because men had other advantages, so it wasn't supposed to be preyed upon. But when you start monetizing that kind of behavior and celebrating in the press, you're going to get a class of activists, because let's remember, it's the activists, not the whole trans community, who have sought this additional privilege and gone, well, I can outcompete women in the sporting field because I'm a man, is what they're saying. And so they use that privilege to gain very real financial and basically online fame for their careers in a world where they otherwise would not have been noticed. So they are weaponizing and preying upon a victimhood class for their own means. And the point of it, letting women speak, is women are saying, hang on, we can prove that what you are doing is wrong. It's morally wrong, and it's always been wrong. And so the whole idea of silencing women is to protect their culture of taking advantage of women's spaces. So they don't want women to complain, because if women complain, eventually the general population is going to put a stop to it. And that's what's happening now. We've seen in the States, they've started ruling against this. They are returning to normal. What's happening, there's even a bill in Florida that's just been put through where women's bathrooms and change rooms will now be protected. So the tide is turning, and that's exactly why they wanted to shut women up.
Do you know, I look at this from a whole bunch of angles. It's almost like they're weaponizing gender or dysphoria or mental health against women. I saw footage of the New Zealand Let the Women Speak. If that happened in a street or a home, the males doing that would have been arrested for domestic violence. Why is that not happening?
Well, that's the whole point of privilege and victimhood politics, where you can have one crime and different punishments for the same crime because your punishment is predicated on your victimhood status. So you're almost less guilty of a crime if you belong to a subsequent victimhood group. And the most privileged group in the entirety of the community these days is a trans woman, in other words, a biological male. They're the most protected. So they can't really commit crimes in this sort of situation, because the people who are charged with dishing out justice are frightened of the backlash against themselves. And that's like it's the old witch burning mob idea of where it's all based upon how the mob feels rather than what is true and what is just. Now, we have to put this in perspective. It's not just gender that's been weaponized and trivialized. There's a whole range of medical conditions which are being impersonated on places like TikTok in exchange for clicks and fame. So there's a problem now where people are pretending to have multiple personality disorders en masse in order to gain attention. Wow. That's happening amongst our kids. And so this trans debate of, I always say activist trans, but it's not everybody, is part of the wider pattern of using some kind of victimhood class to gain popularity, most likely on social media, which is where this has really come to the fore.
Yeah. I guess where I've got a really serious problem with this stuff, and again, I don't care what anyone wants to be. When you force me to be something I'm not, or where you come against what my values are, I have an issue with that. Where I really get concerned is Victoria. I really believe that the Liberal Party is Dan Andrews' best asset. The two leaders that they had, and Matthew Guy, who yesterday blamed everybody, blamed the ABC, blamed everyone, couldn't blame himself. And I've got insider information on that, which I put on my reality check. But I won't call him a leader, or Dan Andrews' best asset, that's what I'll call him. John Pizzuto suspends a conservative Christian woman in Moira Deeming from the party room for attending and speaking. What is up with the Liberal Party? And why are they doing this? Are they all lost their marbles?
Well, the point with the Liberal Party is we expect Labor and the Greens and the Teals to be rather off their rockers. We don't expect much from them. So no one's surprised when they treat the women's conference down there. We knew they'd behave poorly toward them. But the Conservative Party, be they Liberal or National, they are meant to be held to a higher moral standard. That's the whole reason that we have a Conservative Party. It's to uphold society's standards. And when Pasutos went down there, and he didn't just ignore the rally, he didn't just fail to recognise the importance of supporting women when they're being basically attacked by adult men, which is what was happening. He decided to weigh in on it, and he didn't just weigh in on it, he allowed a slur, a very damaging slur, to be issued against one of his own MPs. And instead of then, like when that happened, instead of going, that's wrong, that's too far, the press are out of line with this, he should have defended Moira Deeming, he decided to double down. He supported and failed to denounce what was being said about her. And worse, he then had her basically evicted from her position, which is punishing a woman for standing up for women's rights. And you say things like, does the Liberal Party have a problem with women? Well, he has a problem with women.
He's got one.
In this case, his leadership in the opposition, the Victorian opposition there, has a problem with women because they refused to stand behind them, and then they allowed them to be slandered. Now that, and then he punishes MP for it. It is absolutely disgraceful. He should not be the leader, and he owes everybody, not just Moira Deeming, an apology.
Yeah. Now, I got to be very careful in what we say here. Actually, I don't, but let me just go there. From my articles in the Age and in the Herald Sun about bullies leading the Libs down there, and it seems to me that he is targeting purposefully, this is my opinion, conservative Christian women. If you are on the left, which he has got a whole bunch of lefties in there, women, that are part of his ganging up of people like Renee and Moira down there, it seems to me that it is targeted at a specific group of women. What's your thoughts on that, Alexandra?
Well, Moira isn't even from what you would call the right wing of the party. She was originally from the left, from Labor, and she's come back to the Liberals, and she's down there holding up conservative values. And basically, in today's progressive world, and it's not just the Liberal Party down in Victoria, it's politics in general. There is a crusade against anybody who holds values that contradict this new Marxist identity politics grift. Then you are going to be in trouble, and you are going to be isolated from the political realm, because they don't want any competition of ideas. Because the one thing that's escaping people's notice is that some of this identity politics stuff is not popular. Whenever they ask the polls, for instance, should men be allowed to compete against women in sport, they come back in excess of 95% no, of course not, every single time they ask. And yet if you ask Canberra and the Parliament in Canberra, you can bet it'd be a 95% yes. So that shows there is a huge difference between public opinion on Marxist politics and Canberra's opinion. Now, that's what the politicians are frightened of. So if there is a woman like Moira Deeming sitting in the party who disagrees with the leadership, she could very well end up taking over the party as its leader, because she's more popular than the leader himself. Now, that is why they get marginalized. It's to do with the hierarchy of power. And this is a particular issue in which Pasuto knows he cannot win. And he knows that he's done the wrong thing here, because public opinion has said he's done the wrong thing. And Andrews himself, the Premier, should also be punished. But of course, there is no variety of thought in the Labor Party. So he's not worried, because there's no one's going to come up and challenge his leadership, which is the only reason that Daniel Andrews doesn't care.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Ellie, it's always great to talk to you. I always find you very refreshing, thought-provoking. Now, we've called this Let the Mothers Speak, and I got you on here because you've been a great nurturer. You're a great nurturer of people through the pandemic, and I want to thank you for your voice. What would you say to single women out there? What can they do? Or single mums out there, or just women in, what can they do to turn this tide and be effective? What can they do?
Well, funnily enough, the message that was taught to us in school back before the woke era, which was that you should be true to yourself and you should compete against men on equal footing as far as intellectually speaking. You should have the career that you want. You should meet the man that you want, and have the life that you want for yourself, and pursue that goal, and to uphold truth and good moral standards for yourself and for the community. That was what we were taught. Unfortunately, all of my friends are now Teals voters. They forgot all of their dreams and ideals, and they've all got to marry doctors, and they no longer have any careers or dreams. And that's why they've all gone into activism. They've got literally nothing else to hold on to except activism. Well, I'd say instead of making yourself feel virtuous via a hashtag or changing the color of your Facebook photograph, find virtue in doing something useful for society. If that is raising a family and children, that is a major contribution to society. If that is going and having a career and making the world better for somebody else and the next generation, that's also a great contribution. But make a contribution of some kind for the betterment of society. And don't let anyone tell you, not to do that or to be quiet. And don't let those privileged class of these new men tell you to shut up, because women have just as much of a role to play as men in the next generation of this world.
Absolutely. Alexandra Marshall, it's always great to talk to you. Now, before we go, where can we find you?
Okay, you can find me in a couple of places now. So first, I'd say head over to ADH TV, and it's free. You can watch so many of your favorite conservative commentators there. We've just signed up the great Mark Stein, who's now on our program. And I have 2 shows for Spectator TV every week and my own show every Saturday. So come along, join the new family. We are the shows that you want to watch, and we say the things you want to hear that you can't hear elsewhere. And of course, go to spectator.com.au and subscribe. We've got 1 month free trial for the online, and we've got 10 issues for $10 if you want the print magazine and the online access.
Alexandra Marshall, it's always a great joy to have you, and thanks for being on Let the Mothers Speak. God bless you in all you do.
Thank you very much.
Before we bring today to a close, and I'll give you some closing words, I have a special event on the 17th of this month. And it's special because I've asked one of my favorite friends, and I do mean this guy really is a freedom fighter, I'm telling you, and a guy that I've listened to and follow what he says, to come to a very special event. Our economic crisis is about to get worse. Now, those of you that stick your head in the sand and want to pretend it's all good and you're addicted to Centrelink, this is not for you. Those of you that basically your strategy to getting out of this mess or overcoming is hope, wish, and pray, good luck with that. Those of you that are just throwing up your arms in the air and say, well, it's all turned to pot, we can't do a thing. Well, we can't work with people like that either. But those of you that are serious about doing something and taking responsibility. I was just listening to someone this morning that says, being born male, there is a greater sense of responsibility. A lot of the problems we're seeing right now is because men aren't men at all. No, they're bullies, some of them. They're narcissists, some of them. They're harassers, but they're not men. And as I said to someone today, bullies are just cowards. The way you treat a bully is you respond accordingly. But those of you that want to really do something about your financial world, I'm going to ask the team to put up a link. We have a very special event coming up on the 17th, and it will fill up. Mercedes.com/Troy. We have 2 sessions, Wednesday morning and 1 Wednesday night. It's both the same content. If you'd like to come, it's free. Honestly, folks, we do things for free. We do it for free. Just get the education. You don't need to invest in anything. Just get the education. If you're using yesterday's methods in today's world, you're not going to have it tomorrow. So let's man up and let's woman up and let's show up. Mercedes.com/Troy to get your free entry ticket to our online global event and learn how we can smash past all this inflation and learn how to really beat what's happening in the current controlled World Economic Forum agenda climate. So be part of that. Also, my free book. Again, it is free. It doesn't come any better than free. If you'd like a copy of my brand new book, Unbreakable, and the audio version, just go to prayandpushback.com/push. And of course, our Millionaire Mindset Club. Guys, part of my passion is to help people work on their mindset. And if we can get that right, everything else falls into place. The good book says, as a man thinketh, so is he. And we need to work on our thinking. So be part of that. We'd love you to be part of it. In my closing comments, I want to thank every single one of the presenters today. My apologies, and Senator Pauline Hanson sends her apologies. Due to circumstances outside of her control and mine, she was unable to be here, but she's a great leader. And I tell you what, in my opinion, part of the problem is that we've got men that refuse to be men. And as I said, they can be bullies, they can be narcissists, they can be cowardly, like some of the leaders that we've seen who were, during the COVID thing, they could put something up there about BLM, but couldn't do anything. And I'm speaking about a lot of church leaders, by the way. Couldn't say anything about their own people that were losing their jobs. I call them cowards, because that's what they are. And for evil to prosper, all good people need to do is stay silent. It is the silent majority that always loses traction. And we can't afford to be silent. It was said of Esther when she was confronted with what was going on with her people. She was told this: you've been brought to this kingdom for such a time as this. And if you keep your mouth shut, deliverance will come from somewhere else. But you and your entire family, you're gone. And that's where we're at right now. We need to speak, and we need to declare, and we need to stand up for our women, for our daughters, for our granddaughters. And I'm challenging the men out there to put your big pants on and stop being so silent. And I'm also want to challenge women out there, regardless of your age. If you don't fight for what you want, don't cry for what you lose. If you don't fight for what you want, if you don't fight for your freedoms, don't cry when you lose them. Please don't do that. I was listening recently to a Christian leader talking about how he didn't know what it was like to pastor during the pandemic. And I said, you didn't. You didn't. You were a coward. You're overseas. You're out there doing whatever you're doing. You abandoned ship. And there was a few of them, by the way, because they didn't stand for anything. And eventually when you don't stand for what you love and don't stand for what you believe, you'll lose both. This book here, which I hold up, is the sacred book. That's what they're coming after. That book in which the whole laws of government and laws of the land were written upon. I'm not asking people to be religious zealots. That's not what I'm asking for, because there's a lot of nutcases out there. Believe you me. They inbox me all the time. Not you guys, of course. But we're going to stand for truth. And if we don't stand for truth, we're going to fall for lies. I want to thank everybody for being part of today, all the ladies and the gentlemen, and Elon for making a guest appearance. Hey, do me a favor. Could you please share this message? Look, don't just watch it. It's so selfish just to watch. Share it. If we could get everyone that listens to share this, we can make a difference. Thanks so much, everybody. And God bless you. And thank you to James and at Damn Good Studios and to Dallas and my wife out there that are all working behind the scenes. And God bless you, everyone. Oh, Sunday morning, Reborn. Don't miss it. It's going to be absolutely phenomenal. I'll see you there.